Hannah Kobayashi's situation is getting crazier every single day, and I recorded this video that you're about to see about the LAPD prep. I really break it down, and I get to the bottom of why they defined her as a voluntary missing person. Then, hours later, as I'm getting ready to post this, news comes out about this green card scandal. And for me, I think differently, a little bit differently, okay? And to me, this scandal, this green card information absolutely perfectly supports what I'm talking about in this video. From the very beginning, I felt as though there was some sort of exploitation and abusive relationship, or perhaps trafficking going on. And very often, any type of trafficking will begin as this illusion of a relationship, whether it's romantic, familial, platonic, what have you. This is how trafficking begins. Trafficking situations also historically have had an issue with how law enforcement can get involved. If this is an adult who is being trafficked, it's far more difficult because there's usually some sort of element of a free will choice being made, but under duress. So that's why I'm giving this intro to the video, because it perfectly supports all of the new information that's coming out. And I have a feeling that by New Year's, we're going to know a lot more about the Hannah Kobayashi case. If you don't know who I'm talking about, Hannah Kobayashi is a 30-year-old woman who went missing in LA when she missed her connecting flight from Maui to JFK in LA. She sent a lot of cryptic text messages. Her family hasn't heard from her since the 11th of November. There was a lot of weird things going on, talking about the Matrix and that she has been mind-effed and all of her funds have been drained. And then she goes missing. Her phone stops pinging. She is sighted once or twice in LA on surveillance cameras. And then last she was seen is November the 12th, crossing the border into Mexico. And there has been such hullabaloo over the internet and people accusing the family of setting up some sort of scam for money for a GoFundMe, which I think is absolutely false. I think all of this new information actually supports Sydney 100%. And the fact that she didn't quite know all of the information, and she said that. And she also said she feels like she's under the control of somebody. And let's not forget that the family was learning about all of this information with the green card and the marriage and all of this as Hannah was missing, as they're looking for her. And the fact that the LAPD may have known that she was crossing the border into Mexico earlier, or that they could have gotten that information earlier, closer to the 12th, only further justifies and supports Sydney's frustration. So we're going to go through a lot in this video in terms of the defining what a missing person, what a missing voluntary person is, why they had to do it, and then how trafficking happens. And let me know what you think. Guys, seriously, I love your comments. I want to hear everything you have to say. I do appreciate your likes and subscribes. Like I said, it helps me. Again, I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. God bless. I don't want to just fan the flames of the Hannah Kobayashi situation, but I feel like this is relevant. Are you ready to go down the journey with me? All right. As of 2 days ago, the LAPD had a press conference stating that they have deemed that there is no foul play. She's doing this voluntarily, and perhaps she has some family issues that she needs to sort out with her family. When I was watching that, basically, a lot of red flags were going off, but not complete red flags, right? It was as though they were going through a checklist to me. And leading the public to believe one thing, but also not being completely deceptive either. There wasn't a real deception. So it was a little odd. I wasn't sure how to feel about it. But they were also missing some really relevant information. And they were also very careful about what they did say. Okay, and we're going to get there. After taking a day, I started thinking about this other case of a teenager who went missing in 22 from a Mavericks game, I believe, in Dallas when she was there with her stepdad. She went to the restroom. She was lured by somebody who trafficked her and kidnapped her, abducted her, took her to Oklahoma City. There was a lot of issues in terms of the policy of the Dallas Police Department in how to report a missing person.
And when they didn't find her during the initial search, Kyle Morris was told he had to report her missing to the police department where they lived, in North Richland Hills, 30 miles away. According to the North Richland Hills Police Department, by the time Morris got back home and filed the report, it was 1:24 the next morning. The department entered her into the National Missing Person database about 2 hours later at 3:27 a.m. Even though the teen went missing in Dallas, it was 2 days before the Dallas Police Department sent out a bulletin to patrol officers on April 11th. A week after that, on April 18th, she was found, not by Dallas or North Richland Hills Police, but by Oklahoma City Police, only after her parents worked with an anti-trafficking group in Houston to match her photos with sex ads that traffickers had created of her online.
So that got me thinking about what policies are going on here. I'm hearing a checklist, and I'm not sensing full deception, but it's not complete. There's something isn't right. There's something off here. So I started looking up the law in California, and keep in mind, I am not a lawyer, okay? Like, I don't know. So I don't even know if this is the right thing to be looking at, but basically I found something. I'll put the link down below. It's Prevention of Crimes and Apprehension of Criminals, Violent Crime Information Center. In the state of California, there is no waiting period when somebody is determined to be missing. And anyone, any authority and any law enforcement branch has to take the report, and then there's a chain of command that they follow and a process, right? So basically, this code is outlining that structure, that process. In 14215, though, they go to defining what is a missing person. So 4215A states, as used in this title, missing person includes but is not limited to any of the following. 1, an at-risk adult. 2, a child who has been taken, detained, concealed. Okay, that's a child. 3 is another child definition. A child who is missing voluntarily or involuntarily. Okay, so here we know a missing person has to be an at-risk adult. And then in B, it says, as used in this title, at risk means there is evidence of or there are indications of any of the following. So first they define what is a missing person. It's either a child under these certain circumstances or an adult that's at risk. What's an at-risk adult? Here's the definition. The person missing is the victim of a crime or foul play. 2, the person missing is in need of medical attention. 3, the person missing has no pattern of running away or disappearing. 4, the missing person may be the victim of parental abduction. 5, the person missing is mentally impaired, including cognitively impaired or developmentally disabled. Basically, what is happening here is during that press conference, they were going down this line and they were checking off the fact that she's not an at-risk person. There was no crime. He said that twice. And the reporter, who I believe was a plant, asked that question specifically. So you didn't determine that there's any crime? No, there's no crime.
Safe to say that no crime has been committed. There is no evidence of it.
At this point, we have not been able to determine any crime has been committed.
Chief, given that there's no reason then for any law enforcement agency to detain or arrest her at all at this point.
That's correct.
Medical attention, she looked fine. She didn't look like she was harmed.
She was alone with her luggage and appeared unharmed. At this time, Kobayashi's case has been classified as a voluntary missing person. Kobayashi returns to the United States. Law enforcement will be notified. The missing person case will remain active in the missing and unidentified persons system until her safety is confirmed by law enforcement.
The person missing has no pattern of running away or disappearing. Hold that. We'll be right back. Maybe the victim of parental abduction, not the case. Her father, unalived himself, allegedly. The person missing is mentally impaired, including cognitively impaired or developmentally disabled. And they're saying no. It seems as though, based on her posts on social media, that she had a desire to disconnect from the world.
Well, for the question of whether she wanted to disconnect, by looking at her past social media, we then saw indications that there were some desires or posts that would be consistent in somebody who would have the desire to disconnect from their phone.
Their whole task in that press conference was speaking to why she's not an at-risk adult. Not anything else. Not that we've solved it, not that we've figured something out, not that we know what's going on. And every time they were asked a question, well, why do you think she was sending these messages? And where is she going? And was there any indication of a group? Blah, 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 blah. They were not willing to get into any of the other facts or that they even wanted to, right? Because in order to further investigate anything, you need to meet all of these, you need to meet at least one. Here's the kicker though. Number 3, the person missing has no pattern of running away or disappearing.
Our fears were just because she's never done this before. You know, she's traveled, she's, you know, gone to different places, but she's always checked in. She's always let us know what's going on.
So if we look at it legally, they could be legally accurate. But are they factually accurate? Has Hannah ever run away? If she hasn't, as Sydney has stated, then the press conference that we saw was basically making Hannah's situation fit. Because I think that it would take a lot more resources. I don't even know the process. But once, you know, she crosses over into another country, that opens up a whole other kind of process, right? There was no linkages or seemingly no link to any known trafficking or organized crime organization. And basically that she's one person. She seems to have walked on her own accord all by herself into Mexico. Then there's nothing else that they're going to do about it. And then they just decided to, you know, give it a little extra cake by saying,
think about the people that you're leaving behind, your loved ones who are going to be worried sick about you. The number of people, including law enforcement and other partners who are going to be looking for you, which then potentially takes them away from other work that is also critically important. So there's a lot other than somebody just deciding that they want to leave and disconnect. Consider those that are behind you and those that will be impacted by your actions.
No, there's probably some, you know, family issues. And
yeah, I mean, it's no indication that there would be anything to cause this to happen in this fashion, for her to go off. But like any family situation, you know, who knows what the dynamics are.
You know, so just interpret that how you want to. But basically, we have an entire like social media community that's turning on this poor family. And the family's being driven apart as well. I don't know what their dynamics are. I don't know them. I never met them. I never met Hannah. But, you know, a little weird. The other thing about the LAPD press conference that I did not like is that when they were talking about Hannah's state of mind and what her plans were, they were only talking about Instagram posts. There was nothing stated about direct messaging or any kind of communication within social media apps, right? And so I think that has to do with the fact that in order to get a search warrant, right, to request the records from like Instagram or Facebook or whatever other social media platform she's on and sending messages through, like you would need a search warrant in order to get that information, right? So in order to get a search warrant, you have to show probable cause of something, right? So you would need to, you know, show some sort of evidence here, which they probably could. The person has no pattern of running away or disappearing. And she doesn't. She does fit this description. It depends on who they're asking, though, right? So apparently they were in touch with one family member who is now disconnected from the other family members, the aunt and the rest of them. And so now Sydney and the rest of them have their own lawyer who is from, you know, one of the channels, and she's a lawyer and she's going out there and she's putting together a team to help her. And I'm really happy about that because that's what they need right now. Just like the girl in Dallas, I believe that a private investigator is going to be the one to solve this. To be a friend or a family member who, and I'm not saying that they should do this, is going to hack or change their password in Instagram and get in there and take a look at the messages, because clearly the police did not do that. The police are looking at social media posts, the same thing that the public is looking at. And that's how they're making their determination. Now, I understand that they did do their due diligence. They're requesting for vendors to like voluntarily give their surveillance video. They were doing due diligence to make sure that like she didn't cross with a trafficker or anything like that. But just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Human trafficking doesn't always look like how we think it's going to look, right? And we have to understand that the LAPD is working within, it is its own bureaucracy, working within a larger bureaucracy, right? So in order to get the funds and the resources, in order to do the investigation, they have to abide by certain guidelines and meet certain marks legally, even if factually they have like an intuition or they're being guided a certain way or something's telling them to go look somewhere. They still have to provide enough evidence, probable cause or something in order to get a search warrant, right? In order to move forward, in order to get the approval for the funds or whatever. They have guidelines they have to abide by, unlike the internet and unlike a private investigator hired by the family. What started this all, in my mind, was yesterday in New Jersey. The Attorney General held a press conference because they made several arrests in a sex trafficking ring, 2 sex trafficking rings, actually, and this is what he said.
Human trafficking is a crime where victims are often hidden in plain sight, and signs of human trafficking often go unnoticed because the relationship between the trafficker and the victim masquerades as often as a consensual, romantic, or familial relationship, or even sometimes as a legitimate employment relationship. So we must dispel the myths and misconceptions about human trafficking, including this commonly held notion that this is something that only happens to other people. In fact, human trafficking can affect every community across our state and indeed across this country. This misconception limits and hinders our ability to detect human trafficking and to prosecute it.
And he's totally correct. In fact, I went to the Polaris Project.org, which is an organization, focused on human trafficking, exploitation, education, resources, and advocacy, right? And policy. So here on one of their posts, and I'll link it down below as well, it's called Love and Trafficking, How Traffickers Groom and Control Their Victims. And unfortunately, I'm not saying this is Hannah's situation, but it very well could be. It says, if you've never been targeted by a trafficker or in an abusive or manipulative relationship of any kind, you may well think that nothing ever would convince you to have sex for money. So now it goes into what traffickers, how they basically groom their victims. Traffickers are experts at finding moments when people are vulnerable, of working the angles, of manipulating reality and leveraging fears. This process is called grooming. So targeting. Traffickers are adept at identifying people with noticeable vulnerabilities or needs. They may scour specific locations such as bus stations, shelters, or local malls, looking for someone without a safe place to stay, or who they may be able to charm with their flattery and attention. And then it goes on, like they may look for other people with self-esteem, bad self-esteem, they went through a bad breakup, lonely, things like this. Gaining trust. Once a trafficker, just like an abusive or an abusive partner or a narcissist, once a trafficker has identified their victim, they also gain that person's trust. They form a bond over several conversations or pretend to care about the person's experience. They'll pose as good listeners who care, and so on and so forth. They'll also meet the person's needs, right? So if they don't have money, they'll buy them things. They'll give them money. If they need a place to stay, they'll do that. If they're lonely, they'll talk to them. They'll meet that person where they are. And then they start isolating, and then that's when the exploitation begins. And then because you have this person is isolated from their family, isolated from their friends, they're already being exploited. You then, there's different strategies that they then employ and physical force if necessary to maintain control over their victim. The investigative work that the LAPD has done seems to be at face value. There's nothing indicating any of this. However, they're only looking at the face value of everything. They didn't talk about messages. They didn't talk about posts. They interviewed the one person who she was seen with on a surveillance camera at LAX, determined that he had nothing to do with it, and he was cleared. And that's fine. And I mean, like, I'm a type of person, I'll just start talking to anybody too, especially if I'm going through something. I'll be like, oh my gosh, like, blah, 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 you know, and then like we have a moment like, oh my gosh, like, this is so funny. And then we leave, we part ways. You know, so, and Hannah, from what I understand, like, she's that kind of like very sweet, open person who would talk to people, right? Kind of free spirit, right? And I also noted in my last video how she was very open about where she has traveled on her Threads reply to that guy in LA, that DJ. Where she's traveled, what she did, why she liked it, where she plans on going, that she'll be alone. I mean, I went through her Instagram a bit, and I didn't really see anything that indicated that she wanted to disconnect from the world. You know, I feel like the LAPD had to meet a burden here, and they couldn't. So what they were able to do is, with like a side story of maybe some family conflict, and perhaps she's done this before, which Sydney is saying this has never happened. She's never done this to me. You know, they're going under they're saying she's not an at-risk person, thus she's not a missing person, thus she's voluntarily missing. Because in order to be involuntary missing, you have to meet one of those qualifications. And she does, but they're saying she doesn't. But there's no way to prove that unless you have Hannah here, right? That's the other point that they were making. We need Hannah here. So what do we need to do? I think the family is doing exactly what they need to do, in that they need to stop divulging information directly to the public. I think that is a smart idea. And to go through the RAD movement 100%, they know what they're doing. They are trained people, and now they have a lawyer who has a team, and that is exactly what they should be doing. I'm pretty confident now that they have the lawyer involved, they'll be able to get a PI to work with that, with their organization, and try to get some answers, right? Because let's keep in mind, like, even if she is found, let's say that she has been manipulated and coerced in some kind of way to joining some sort of organization, which was another question asked of the LAPD. If that's true, if she's being manipulated, coerced, she would need to choose to leave at that point. And just like, and maybe I'll do a video on it, but on Twin Flames Universe, there's a whole group of parents trying to get their adult children out of away from this man. And other cults, it happens all the time. And we don't want to call them cults, that's fine. We can call them high demand organizations. This could even be like certain communities within very mainstream churches do the same exact thing. It's just different communities. But once someone is an adult and they have made a choice to enter into an exploitative situation, you can't get them out unless they want to go, right? You would have to literally perform a crime and kidnap that person and then get them into some sort of deprogramming. But that's committing a crime, right? And in Hannah's case, that's not even a possibility because they don't even know where she is. It's tough, right? Because like the Polaris Project noted in the beginning of their statement here on their page, if you've never been targeted by a trafficker or in an abusive or manipulative relationship of any kind, meaning, like, have you ever talked to somebody who is with somebody who's very abusive or dysfunctional and not good for them? And you're telling them this person is not good for you. Hell, have you ever been that person in that abusive relationship? And people told you, did you leave right away? How long did it take you? How long did it take your friend? Are they still there? Did they ever leave? What did it take? I mean, I'm just gonna, yesterday I watched the sentencing of Ashley Benefield, which was the case that really brought me into talking online about things, even though I didn't really talk about her in her case. And I keep trying to, but I don't know, maybe I'm just emotional about it, but that's like worst case scenario, right? Being in an abusive relationship where it's mostly psychological, coercion, manipulation, gaslighting, things like this, and also this huge smear campaign that's against her. And it has been going on for quite some time, and now they're all the flying monkeys like basically attacked her yesterday, i.e. the family. Understandably so, because from their perspective it's genuine, right? But like, that's the worst I'm sorry, I just went off on a little tangent. I digress. But that's worst case scenario. She tried to leave. She kept trying to leave. She kept trying to ask for help. Nobody, like, she kept coming up against brick walls. And so her plan was to move. And when she moved, her hope was that the authorities in Maryland would be more amenable to actually helping her, as opposed to the authorities in Florida and type of people who she lives with there, who put her in prison for 20 years. So, I mean, that's worst case scenario, right? If this happens and if you don't get out, you know, there could be like a high profile trial. Most of the time it's not, right? Most of the time it's just, and, you know, I'm not trying to like alarm anybody or anything like that about Hannah and what she could be possibly facing. I don't even know what her situation is, right? But in terms of abusive relationships, like most of the time what's going to happen is you make bad choices in life. You don't go after your dreams. You don't start that job or business or go to school or move to a certain place, right? It's a lot of financial manipulation, usually physical abuse, emotional abuse. Does it ever get to like the level of like a high profile case or something? Probably not. Most of the time, no. It's a very small percentage, but there is still like an abuse that happens there in terms of like the, you know, prevention of somebody actually living the life that they want to live. And it might not be a physical death, but it like a psychological and you know, a death of the spirit, really. You know, and that's a great sin, in my opinion. With a tremendous amount of karma. So anyway, so that's where I am with this. I think the family is doing exactly what they need to do. As I said from my very first video, not everything is for public consumption, and that is for a reason. That said, I also think that they need somebody who's going to help them get into the Instagram account, Facebook, and whatever else she had, to see who she was actually speaking with. And these things take time, right? You want to think that if you call the cops, like they're just going to run and help you, but their hands are tied in many ways as well. Right? I don't think that they needed to feed this story of, you know, the fact that Hannah, you know, might have some conflicts with the family and they're going to need to work that out. They didn't really need to go there, but they did. He didn't do anything wrong either, right? That's the thing. Like, they did not break the law. They're not being completely deceptive. They're going based on the evidence that they have, right? They didn't do anything wrong. So please, like, I understand they're doing their due diligence. I'm not calling them out for anything. I'm just saying what I see it to be. But every time he said something that is like an interpretation of the evidence, the guys in the back, like, would shift. It's just interesting what body language you can pick up on, and also your perspective in life and how you perceive and what it means. In my opinion, when the guys were shifting in the back, it denoted some sort of uncomfortability in the statement there, because these are all men, right? And what kind of man wouldn't want to save a woman? You know, you would have to be kind of really messed up. So I don't think that any of those men up there on that stage, or any of the ones they work with, would intentionally not find her. It's just a terrible system that we have, but it's the best one that we have. And I am confident that once the family gets their own private investigator, that they'll be able to locate Hannah and go from there. See if she's willing, if it's a situation where she like joined a group or some sort of relationship that's abusive and was kept secret on purpose because she was manipulated to keep it secret, then hopefully they'll be able to talk her into whatever it is that, you know, would be the best thing for her. But this attacking of the family is ridiculous. I mean, I don't know I don't know who would do, like, who would really, they hired a lawyer. I don't think that they're scamming all of social media. Like, I think everybody needs like a collective therapy session, because y'all are just way like too, I don't know, just thinking the worst of everybody. I know this is the world that we live in, and we have these types of politicians, but I know a man is dead. There's an entire family who is on the news as much as they can be, and speaking out against the LA Police Department, you know, who's saying that they're in touch with the family, but they might be in touch with the aunt, but they're not in touch with the sister. You know, it's, you know, you have to just make your own discernment and really think of things from a logical standpoint. And what would be the advantage of you know, causing this huge national story just to get a few $1,000 or $10,000 from a GoFundMe? It's not worth it. Your dad's dead and your sister's missing. It's silly. No way. She's legitimately missing. And she is at risk, but they can't prove it. I'm gonna go now. I don't know what the next video is, and I hope you're all well. God bless.